Hello again, this is John Burroughs, and I'm going to continue with my autobiography, 7 Years to Life. This is chapter 59, and it's called Pizza, Anyone? Steve F. is one of my closest friends. It is always hard to say who your best friend is in life, but aside from my wife Christina, it would be him. You will learn later on why Steve is a person that will be included in my personally respected people Hall of Fame. This story goes back roughly 25 plus years when Steve was the All-American boy, and still is, kind of. I know that his dad, an FBI agent for more than 30 years, was Steve's guiding force and a man that deserves tremendous respect in his own right. Steve's dad has passed away, but I know that Steve misses him and thinks of him often. Hell, I miss him. You are fully aware by now that I was the type of teenager that an FBI agent would frown on, and definitely would not want his son hanging out with my type. However, Steve's dad was the opposite. Whenever I was invited to dinner at Steve's house, his dad showed no bias toward me and treated me with respect and courtesy. I only knew him a short time, but not once did I feel uncomfortable in his presence. Steve, being a product of his upbringing at the time, as you would expect, was the wholesome young American lad. I used to call him Mrs. Fletcher's little boy, Steve. He was Leave It to Beaver and Buster Brown merged into one personality. There is no disrespect in this description of Steve. In fact, it was enviable. However, it brought along with it a certain innocence and blind faith in the goodness of people. Maybe that is because those were the type of people he always associated with until he met me. We became friends rather quickly and unexpectedly. Most people could not understand how we became so close. The things we had in common were not a lot at the time, but we shared a love of sports, especially baseball and basketball, laughter, and a board baseball game that we have been playing for over 40 years. In the beginning, we would play the game for hours on end. The time spent playing that game allowed us to talk about other things besides just sports. Girls were a big topic along with music, and we shared our opinions often about other people and the state of the world in general. If I am being honest with myself, I feel closer to Steve than I do my own brother. That will be explained later. Steve knew about my penchant for getting high from a variety of substances, and he also knew some of the people, many of them through basketball. For the life of me, I cannot remember who was in the car with me that fateful night that we drove by El Sirocco in Burlingame. Other than Steve was the only straight guy in the car. El Sirocco, however, was a perfect venue to teach Steve a small lesson about people, and that in some cases people are not who they seem to be, or in this case, they were, but Steve was too green to realize it. El Sirocco was a little neighborhood pizza place on California Avenue in Burlingame for many years before this particular night. It was a place where good friends could gather, share some pizza and beer in a comfortable, reasonably clean environment. Roughly a year before Steve's lesson, El Sirocco began to have some business problems, and the owners were forced to sell to a new group of owners. The new group of owners catered exclusively to drug-dealing biker types and some of their customers. They moved in and did not make a single change to the exterior or interior. This included the pizza sign that was brightly shining on the window of the bar. The problem was El Sirocco did not serve anything that closely remembered pizza in quite a while. It was a booze and pretzel kind of place where these nefarious biker dudes could get drunk, sell drugs, fight, and it rarely ever took place outside of the confines of El Sirocco. As luck would have it on this night, we were driving past El Sirocco. I pulled the car up along the curb, stopped and shut off the engine. Steve was riding shotgun, and I turned to the guys in the back seat to them with a look in my face that said, to just follow my lead. I said, "Oh, God, all that pot has made me hungry. Why don't we chip in for a couple of pizzas?" The other guy said, "Yeah, we're in." We pooled our money and I gave it to Steve, suggested that he go in and order the pizzas. Remember now, Steve looked as straight and innocent as any guy you have ever seen. Steve started to get out of the car, and I don't know what possessed me, but I grabbed him by the shoulder and said, "I can't do this to you. This place was sold a long time ago to some badass people, and the clientele is equally as badass, if not more so. They don't even sell pizza anymore." I was shocked by the way Steve responded to me. The son of a bitch actually began lecturing me. He said the pizza light is on and they would not advertise it if they did not want to sell it. Besides, what can possibly happen to someone trying to help them with their business by purchasing a pizza? You got to have faith in people sometimes, Harrington. I could not believe what I was hearing. I think maybe he was hoping to prove me wrong and show me that there was not any need to be so judgmental. To say the least, this irritated me, so I sent him on his way. The rest of us sat there waiting. About 10 minutes later, Steve had not come out yet, and I had calculated that was too long and became worried that something of a more serious nature may have occurred. I had no problem with going in to find out what was happening, because even though I was not a biker, I certainly resembled one. I opened the door of my car and started to exit the vehicle. Just as I was doing this, I turned and saw Steve coming out of the bar. He looked quite a bit different from the Steve who had entered the building. The look of fear that was on his face was immediately noticeable. His eyes screamed disbelief. His smile had disappeared and was replaced by trembling lips. He approached the car at a rapid pace, constantly looking back over his shoulder. And he was not carrying any pizzas. He hopped into my car, and as I started to drive off, he began speaking at such a rapid pace that made understanding him a challenge. In my mind, the speed of his speech was just another form of hyperventilating. When I finally got him to calm down, he recounted what had just happened inside the bar. He said, "Paul, I cannot believe what just happened. I mean, I started to feel vulnerable. The place was crowded, and you were right. Most of them were the type that when walking towards you on the street, you end up crossing the street or seriously consider it." Still reeling from the effects of fear, he continued on with the story. "I noticed a few small tables, but I did not see any waitresses. The bar was lined with bikers shoulder to shoulder, and they were all looking at me. I overheard one of them say to another, 'Who the fuck is this idiot?' I was still feeling uncomfortable, but I had not given up on the idea of having some pizza. So I squeezed in between two of the bikers at the bar to talk with the bartender." I have to interrupt here because many of you are probably wondering where Steve got the nerve to squeeze in between two bikers. The answer is quite simple. Food, especially pizza or Mexican, can drive Steve to do things you never thought he was possible of even considering. I now have wedged myself between these two biker dudes, and I could see the bartender approaching me, and I felt a sense of relief knowing that this ordeal would soon be over. However, as the bartender approached me, and I felt, the bartender approached, the guys on both sides of me started giving me rib shots with their elbows. I persevered until the bartender arrived and asked how he could help me. I told him I would like to order a couple of large pizzas, one with pepperoni and the other with sausage. The bartender looked at me and said, "You can't be fucking serious, asshole. Look around you. Do you see anyone else in this entire fucking place holding anything that even closely resembles a pizza?" I told him, "No, but you have a bright red neon sign in your window advertising pizza." At the time I thought it was an innocent enough question, but by the way he looked at me, I knew I had gone too far. This confirmed when he told me in no certain terms to get the F out. I proceeded to do just that, and as I walked towards the exit, I was elbowed, punched, and physically abused in general. I still can't believe it. All I did was go in to order some pizza and came out thinking that I had escaped getting my butt kicked or worse. Did I mention that the entire time Steve was ranting, I was laughing hysterically? All I could say was, I try to stop you. Almost every time we get the opportunity to talk with each other, this story comes up.